I have 2:30, which is my start time. So welcome. My name is Luke Gygax. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about world building and how to create an engaging setting. As I was talking about this or thinking about this topic and subject, I kind of realized I was thinking mostly about my idea of what world building is as a game designer or an author of role-playing game materials for the most part. But I realized my career as an Army officer also gave me a lot of tools that would help understand a world. And what you're doing as a writer is understanding the world that you're going to write in and how it's going to affect your story and your characters. So it was kind of interesting for me as an aside to really, and I'm sure you all will have experiences that will help you tap into elements that will help you understand your world and what about it will impact your characters, the plot, and the story, which is the whole point, right? So before we get started, okay, sure, it's not going to work now. All right, I can use this. Before we get started, talk about a little bit about myself. That's one of my favorite topics. I'm a husband and father to three beautiful daughters, Miriam, Amira, and Sabrina. So that keeps me pretty busy at home, and they like to have stories told to them as well. I'm a writer and game publisher, kind of a nascent story writer. I'm collaborating with a gentleman I met here last year, James Hunter, on a story set in my world of Oakroom, which I publish in RPGs, and a few folks here have played some of those adventures. I'm a convention founder and organizer. Gosh, that's a story in itself. So I have a very unusual upbringing in the sense that my father created the game called Dungeons and Dragons. I was born into a household gaming, so I've really never not known RPGs. So I'm kind of patient zero for that. My father passed away in 2008, and for any of you who have lost a parent, you understand what that means. It's really something I don't think you can ever really be prepared for, and it certainly changed my life. It's interesting how there's silver linings or things that come about even from bad things that you don't expect. And obviously my father, none of us are getting out alive, right? But I still wasn't ready to lose my father when he died. But I got to know how important he was to the world when he left. So many people reached out by email, or I was in recruiting command at the time, and people, other soldiers, senior officers called, and they were just going to leave me a voice message, but I was used to answering the phone, so I answered. In recruiting, you try not to let a phone go to voicemail. And they just told me how much my dad meant to them and how he was a part of their development. And so, and it was through his writing that he did that. They didn't know him personally, but the game changed who they were, influenced their path. It helped them find friends. It helped them overcome adversity. And some of them said they wanted to come to Lake Geneva to pay their respects. We didn't have a place to really host anyone, and I thought, well, it wouldn't be appropriate for them to come to a funeral, but maybe I could hold a gathering afterwards, and I did. And we played the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, the old 80s cartoon. That was a lot of fun, as well as a Futurama episode that he was on. And we had food and drink. People brought dishes to pass, and we played games. And I set up a podium just like this, and people got up and told stories about my dad and Dungeons and Dragons and how that influenced their lives. And it was really cathartic. And it was so good for my family and I that I decided I would do that every year. I would just hold a game day, and people would get together and remember my dad. Well, that little convention has turned into a 3,000-person convention in the tiny town of Lake Geneva. And every year we get together and celebrate and make all sorts of new friends and things like that. So for me, it's honestly why I'm here. If I hadn't been doing that, then I don't think I would have met Craig and his brother Guy, and I probably wouldn't be here running D&D for a bunch of authors. So funny how that works out. And I wouldn't have met James and be writing books either. Another thing that I'm kind of branching out into is, for lack of a better term, being a lifestyle ambassador. It sounds fancy, but what does that mean? I spent 33 years in the Army, and so you kind of learn to be service-oriented when you're in the military. That's kind of something they drive home, as one of your values. And I've noticed that a lot of gamers, and potentially a lot of authors too, right? It's a sedentary job. And what I saw is my Facebook feed, which is my primary social media. I know I should probably get on TikTok or do the other ones, but I guess I'm a middle-aged guy, so I go with Facebook a lot. But I just see a lot of my friends showing pictures of themselves and, saying, oh, I'm in the hospital for whatever health problem it may be, or I'm managing my diabetes and things like that. So I thought, well, wouldn't it be neat to change this paradigm, to shift this around and say, why can't gamers be healthy, right? Why can't we make being active and being a hero in our own life through doing some physical activity and really keep my friends around longer, because I like a lot of these people. So I just encourage people through a little something I call Body by Gygax Challenge, and it's just pick something, pick a fitness goal, stretching, yoga, walking, whatever it may be, and do it 3 times a week for 30 minutes. So I think that's something that I think is really neat. So that's a little bit about me, but now on to the topic for today. World building. Okay. We all know it's important for telling stories, right? You have to have a setting. But why? Why is it important? It's because it's going to add realism for your audience, whether that's a reader or the narrator describing it. It's going to be something that helps paint this picture and drives the story that you're telling. So it's part of a writing process or creative process if you're an RPG game designer as well, because the characters, whether they're being played by people at a table in an RPG, or if it's someone consuming your story, it's the world that they're in. In a way, it's it's a landscape. It's the backdrop of your story. It'll include things, that what's going to be important to you: culture, history, the language, the physical setting, geography, climate. It will help you define the theme of your story. So you have a story. Are you going to develop a theme that's going to that's going to speak to larger issues in society? Is there some higher purpose to your writing? The story, the morality that you're choosing. And I would say that it's an iterative process, right? It's something that you're probably going to do before you start writing, right, ideally. I guess there's different schools of thought on this one. Does anyone just start writing and doesn't do any outlining or thinking about the world? Anyone just start writing? Okay. So some people, that's very 50-50, huh? Not true. Okay. A little bit of both. So maybe it just depends. Now, if you're writing in maybe, I guess Earth is what you say, or an Earth-like planet or situation, then maybe you don't have to do a whole lot of that, right? But what if you're writing science fiction or fantasy? Then it might become more important, right, to understand what the world is. So certainly if you're writing, I guess even historically though, you would still want to look at that and just be educated on it. I would call that world building in a way. And what had occurred to me is a staff member in the Army, you have staff. The commander is going to give you a mission. He's going to tell you what needs to be done. He or she's going to tell you what needs to be done. And then the staff is really going to build that story of a way to accomplish what the commander's mission is, right? So in a way, they got to describe certain things. And I'll talk more about that as we get a little further in here. But again, purpose of world building, it's to add realism for the audience. It's to make your story better. All right, how to world build. Well, you have to decide where to start, right? So what's the purpose? What's the purpose of having a world? It's your story, right? So never lose sight of that. I think it's easy, well, maybe especially as an RPG designer, you want to know more details for a world, right? In a story, the focus of your story is not describing everything, it's the story. And it's maybe just developing what's necessary for the story so you don't get lost going down a rabbit hole of building a Tolkien-esque world and developing languages and stuff like that, and you forget, well, wait, what was my story again? So, and that would be easy to do. Is anyone else a procrastinator here? Okay. So wouldn't that be just a great way to procrastinate from actually writing your story? All right, so be careful, be honest with yourself, right? Don't do that. I remember I said, a little aside, first time I wanted to write a module by myself, I sat down to write it, and I was like, oh man, what am I going to write about? It's just a 4-hour adventure for a convention, for GaryCon, right? Just a 4-hour adventure. I couldn't think of anything, so I decided to start creating a world. I said, wow, what if there was this world that was like this, and this was the ancient civilization that was there, and this happened, and here's what the... Why did I do all that? I don't know, but I'm still developing it now, so I guess it's all right. So that was how the world of Oakrim got started, is I needed a story, and I couldn't think of one, so I started big, and I kind of whittled my way down. That's maybe backwards. I think maybe it's sometimes smarter to start small and then start from a small place and then build bigger. And I've seen that done a lot in stories as well as in adventure modules too. So I think I went down a little rabbit hole there myself and learning. So, but it worked. I got it out, and I think it was a good story. All right. So if you pick a story, what's your story? What are you going to talk about? What questions are you exploring? How do you want to tell that story, right? Pick a genre. Is it an alternate Earth? Is it a brand new world with its own, new geography and history and races and ethnicities and cultures and religions and stuff? Is it a dark story? Is it going to be Cthulhu-esque? Is it going to be comic booky? Is it going to be lighthearted? I don't know. Anyone read Dungeon Crawler Carl? Those ones are kind of fun, right? That's pretty lighthearted stuff, but it's fun. Very different than, H.P. Lovecraft or something. Is it a romance? I don't know. And then, of course, you're going to talk about maybe the hooks. Define the laws, the rules. What is it that's going to attract your reader that's different, right, about this world than the world we live in today, right? Because isn't that what we want to kind of talk about, is through something new, or through new environments and new settings, maybe we can tell stories about ourselves or our world, right? That we can draw those parallels, we can tell that story in an interesting way. And then there's all the things, environment, culture, language, history. And those, I think, are really important for understanding a world, especially if it's a new world, right? If you're pulling off something out of Earth, you have a lot of material to draw from, right? So you can Google that pretty much. But if you're trying to make up a new world with a new magic system or science fiction world with technologies and contacts with alien races and things like that, you're going to need to think about how they interact, and through the lens of how it impacts your story. You don't need to know all the, what the imperial senators are lobbying for their districts if it doesn't impact your story, right? So don't go down that rabbit hole. But one of the things that the Army used to, when we were doing planning, it was, I should have put it up on a slide, and it's not very memorable. It's the acronym PMEASY-PT. So yeah, easy. It's an easy one, right? But what it stands for, and I made some notes. It occurred to me, hey, I should probably. It just really occurred to me. This is a great way for understanding you use it to understand unfamiliar or uncertain environments before you go into an operation. Hey, if you got a new world, it's uncertain and unfamiliar, right? So you want to define it a little bit. And this is just a tool, a way of doing it. So look at the politics, the political situation. Who has the power? Is it, who at the local, regional, and larger levels have the power? And again, is your story only going to be in local? Then you probably don't need to know too much about the rest of it, right? So that can be on another day. Like I said, it's an iterative process. You can come back to it for book 2, right? And that's official and unofficial power, right? So there might be a king, but really, who are the power brokers? Is it merchants who have money? Is it a criminal element? Military, and that can include, organized crime, militia groups, threats of, terrorism or things of that nature. Economics, that's always important, right? Economics really drive people in the real world, and so I would think even in a new world, in a new setting, that would be important too. And what is economics? Is it just money? No, not really. It's energy sources, right? Raw materials, labor, right? Is there labor shortages, taxation, transportation networks? How do people move around? If it's a magical society, do people, fly around or teleport, or does everyone have access to space travel? Is it only a few? Is that creating the tension that some people are able to rapidly travel and access certain things and others are being denied? Is that part of your struggle? So it helps you define and think about ways to look at it depending on who your character is and who you're setting up the tension against. Social. This one's, we probably tend to think about that. Your cultural, ethnic groups, religious, social makeup. Traditions and values. Traditions and values. Super important, right? How do people see the world? What do they value? What's important to them? What's going to make your character angry? What are they going to be seeking after? What are they going to see as an insult? What are they going to see as valuable in their lives? What are they trying to accomplish, right? Is this a tradition or value that you want to explore and maybe show that it has great value or doesn't have value, and there's going to be a change in that person, right? In that character to get there, right? Information. How does information flow? Who controls information? Are they changing that information? Is there propaganda? That could be important to your story and character development and what's driving them, and maybe discovering, oh my gosh, I was lied to. Infrastructure, do you need water purification plants? Is there a teleportation center? Are there starports around? And then physical environment, which is the obvious stuff, terrain, weather, climate, how that's going to impact your story. Is there a great drought that is forcing, that now your character is going to go bankrupt and they're forced into a life of crime because of whatever the case may be, right? And then time is the last one, so PT, time. How important is time in your story? How is time moving? Is there impending doom? Is there things that are going on and your character is being forced to do stuff? Or through inaction, will things happen that motivate them to do things? How does time come about there? So I just thought, wow, I just had this epiphany that analyzing things as an Army officer, I could draw upon that to flesh out a world and help understand it from a character perspective in a more deliberate manner. Because I bet people are considering these things when you're writing. All of you guys are, but do you have a framework? Are you comfortable with the framework that you have for understanding it, right? Because when I was looking around, there's a million different checklists and world building, apps and websites and stuff like that. So, does anybody have one that's a favorite for them? Yeah. World Anvil. See, you can use that for gaming too, right? So it's same one. Okay. So it's just a great place to be able to go and, yeah. Okay. There's other, PMEZ PT is just one of them. There's also other ways. There's other little acronym ones you can use. There's PESTLE is one that was just political, economic, socio-cultural, technological, legal, and environmental. So you can just figure out what's kind of important to you. Do you have to define each one of these things? Again, no, right? These are things just to consider in the lens of your story. What do you want to tell? What's important to your characters or your plot? All right, and then the other thing I put on here is inspiration. There's nothing new under the sun, right? Everybody here has probably another author who inspires them, right? That made you want to be a writer. Do you sometimes look at what that person did and see if there's elements that you can pull in and you can imitate or you can take and make in your story, right? So that's okay. There's imitation's the sincerest form of flattery. There is really nothing new. That person that you respect, that you think is amazing, definitely had influences on inspirations on them as well, right? So it's a process. We all try to take what other people are doing well, put our spin on it, and do it. And I don't care if that's whatever you're doing, whether it's writing or anything else. All right. How much is enough? It's a good question, right? How much world building do you need to do? Well, again, think about the story. That's always the thing you got to do. The purpose of you developing the world is to add realism for your audience, right? And maybe also, if you're the person who, again, I bet some people outline and know what the story is before they start really developing it, right? You know the acts of your story. And I think the other kind of school of thought is I let the book write itself, right? So who's a let the book write itself person? We got a couple. I need a detailed outline. Okay, so it's about 50-50, really. Okay. So yeah, the detailed outline is probably a good idea, especially if you're a procrastinator, just in my opinion. So if you're going to let the story kind of write itself, I would say you need to do some world building and maybe frame out what the values are of your character, the other groups that they're interacting with, and think about how the setting, the background, the environment, the politics will influence them. So as you're flowing along in your story and you come up with a situation, well, how is that person going to react? You have to know how they were formed and what their values are, right? Unless you're just writing a story that's you, right? So otherwise you have to know and understand your character and really think about how they'd react to certain situations and stimuli so that you can develop that character, right? Because after a while, people say the character has a life of their own, right? It's almost like a friend of yours that you can anticipate how they would react to something like that. But when you're starting off, how do you know, right? And I have a terrible memory, so I'd have to make notes on that anyway. All right, so what are the factors that are impacting your characters? What do the readers need to know and when? So that's a huge one, right? I think someone said, what's a Rush song, right? Show, don't tell. I think that's an old Rush song. So how many people, somebody give me an example of a book that starts off very early and gives you a whole bunch of background information that's almost like wading through to get to the character in the story. Right? Okay. Song of Ice and Fire. Okay.
Concerning hobbits.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. It's true. Those are all great examples, right? And the Bible has tons and tons of stories in it, right? So those are all wonderful examples, right? But man, it is not always easy to get through those openings, right? I love Tolkien. He's got some great ideas, but Lord of the Rings, I read it as a young person, but man, there was times where my eyes were like watering, and it's like, oh my God, my mind's wandering, like, geez, can we get to the point, please? So there's just a lot of description and background info that maybe isn't central to pushing the story along, right? Whereas if you look at The Hobbit, which is kind of a kid's book, right? But I love that. I've read that like 4 times. I love The Hobbit. That's just a fantastic book. Pacing's a little bit different, right? So just think about that as a reader. And I guess you would know your audience, right? So maybe there's people who really like lots and lots of exposition about the background of something. But I think, for the most part, especially today, people want some little bit more action to get them going. Then you can drop in these bits of information as it is germane to the character and the story development, right? So it feels natural. You're not lecturing somebody like I'm doing. You're getting they're more knowing about it naturally, or kind of learning about it in a more natural feeling way. And just remember, you probably put a bit of work into your world building, right? You've spent a lot of time thinking about it, right? So you probably want to share. I'm going to tell everybody all this stuff. You are going to know more about the world than your readers, because you have to, because you're making the story. You know all the background stuff. and then you're going to parcel that out as needed, right? Some of it may not be needed, but it helped you understand other bits of your world. So just realize that, and that's okay. And maybe it'll be another story, and you'll, in that same world, and you can get to those parts later, so it won't be wasted time. And yeah, don't go down a rabbit hole, that's pretty obvious. And the difference between, for me, I was struck by the difference between role-playing games and novels. So in a role-playing game, I think you do need to spend time and maybe go down some of those rabbit holes, especially if you're writing a setting book that's going to help other storytellers decide what stories to tell through their group, right? Through their players. So it's a little bit of a different exercise. Whereas in a novel, you, as the author, are going to decide exactly what that character is doing, what they are seeing, how they interact with the world, and you're going to have them reach conclusions, right? So you only need to develop and describe to the reader that is important to the story, that's central to the story. Otherwise, it's just going to, like I said, like you're wading through the Silmarillion or whatever that book was by Tolkien that I could never read. I tried reading it as a kid, couldn't do it. But it's all just like, kind of like the Bible and Genesis, somebody begat somebody else, right? And that gets dull as a reader, frankly, right? So I'm sure we've all seen that. Whereas in a setting book, hey, you are giving other storytellers, hey, here's the background information, here are some hook ideas that you can use, and then the players are going to sit down at the table, or on Zoom or whatever it is, or VTT, and together, you guys are going to all collaborate and build a narrative, and they're going to have agency in the story. And so as a referee, as a GM, you're going to have to be able to go with the flow a bit more so with that story. So it's a bit different, but I think there's a lot of similarities, right? So I know I have several game masters in here who are also writers. Who plays RPGs in here as well? All right. Audience is stacked, all right? I suspected that would be the case. All right. So, can we give it a go? What do you think? Want to try it? All right, let's try it. Let me get a pen. Let's come up with a world. Okay, here's the hard bit. Don't give away any good ones that you want to keep for yourself, though, okay? All right, just fair warning. Fair warning. No one's signing any releases or anything? No NDAs have been signed. All right. What story do we want to tell? You want to tell Pinocchio? You want
It's a human trying to become...
reverse I think you said the first. I was like, what? The first Pinocchio? Is there two? I didn't know. All right, so it's reverse Pinocchio. All right, so it's all right, so we're going to tell a reverse Pinocchio. So this is going to be somebody who wants to become an automaton, sort of. Okay, someone who wants to become a cyborg. Maybe this is tying into...
Maybe it's a
path to immortality.
suffering from a disease, a wasting disease.
Okay. All right, somebody who's suffering from a wasting disease. Got it. Okay. So, path to immortality. Somebody who's trying to, avoid the Grim Reaper. That's a pretty, that's a human story. I think we can all identify with that, And their legacy too, huh? Okay. Kind of protect their legacy. Okay. So what genre do we want this? Okay, we're going to have to get a boxing man. Get out the boxing gloves. We got it. Okay, so I heard horror, dark fantasy, steampunk, small town. That's the one. Small town. All right. So I think there's a lot of good ideas out there that could be a lot of fun. So I think we're going to have to take consensus through raising hands and now kind of see where we're at. So I think we had steampunk. So who likes steampunk? Raise your hand. All right, that's pretty good. How about was it dark fantasy? Okay. Cyberpunk. Cool. I think we're steampunk guys. Okay. So it looks like we're. Oh, okay. Small town romance. Okay. All right. The people have spoken. All right. Okay. Small town steampunk romance. That's what we got. Okay. Okay. All right. Hey, you know what? There you go. So now you got your genre, right? So is this going to be an alternate Earth, or is this going to be something that we're making up out of whole cloth? A post-apocalyptic small-town steampunk. Okay. All right, so it could be a world that, like Earth, the future Earth has been. Okay, so it's a post-apocalyptic.
Glad we're starting simple.
You guys are really putting me through the paces here. This is gonna, whew, this is a tough one.
Like angels printing money.
I'm going to take, by the way, I'm simply doing this to get an idea so I can write my next novel. This is it. That's right. Mm.
By the way, this is how we ruin AI.
Yeah, I think if I typed this into, was it Jarvis or Jasper or whatever, I don't know what it would do. I think it would just start smoking and explode. I haven't tried it. Chat GPT. Although I use like a Chat GPT kind of thing. I'm like, all right, I need 10 names for something, right? And then I'll just look at it and be like, okay, those stinker, I'll scramble them around or whatever. So it's.
Have you heard of Gary Gygax's book of names? It's really
It sounds familiar. Yeah. I'll have to check that one out. I know Jim Ward did like a thesaurus, a storyteller's thesaurus that's pretty good too. Has a lot of different, if you need another name for, a bureau or a, wardrobe or something, he's got a whole bunch in there, various items of clothing stuff. Pretty fun, so I have that too. Okay, so it's reverse Pinocchio. Somebody is trying to escape death, secure their legacy, and hopefully find a much longer life or potentially immortality, right? And, of course, well, they have their true love in their small town. Maybe they've known each other since junior high school or something, in the Victorian junior high school. After the well, it's post-apocalyptic, but now it's repeated and it's a new Victorian age. So how does that? Yeah. So how does that work? Okay, so in this post-apocalyptic neo-Victorian steampunk world, what are our laws and morality? Like, what are the hooks? What are the things that are of interest that me and all of us as readers are going to look at and go, that's kind of cool. I want to read this book. So, what do we got?
Necromancy is okay.
What's that?
Necromancy is okay.
Necromancy is okay. Okay, we got. So necromancy. Okay, that could be. Let's raise hands so I can call you, because otherwise it's hard to hear up here. So yes. Oh. Automaton. I can't say it. Cyborgs, robots, are illegal. I can't speak. I don't know what my problem is. I was tongue-tied. Okay. Yes.
Memento mori is the core of their religion. Remember that you too shall die. It was a Victorian
Oh.
thing that they were very focused around that death was omnipresent.
Okay.
But it's okay because you can raise them back. The necromancy's okay.
Right. Well, you're going to die anyway, but maybe we can bring you back for a little while or something. Okay. That's right. Yeah.
What if old technology is outlawed? So the
Okay.
thing that brought along the apocalypse, the AI, the Skynet.
Okay.
We can't do that stuff anymore. It's all going to happen again. That's why we're all living in a steampunk gaslight world.
Okay. So yeah. So there's.
Terminator
Yeah, no technological advancement.
No texting.
Okay. So you got another one? All right.
Well, it's not a law or morality, it's more of a story point.
Okay, let's hear it.
So his one true love is trapped in an AI and a piece of technology from before the world died and went post-apocalyptic. So now he's trying to live forever as an AI beside her, but everything is alcohol.
Okay, that's okay.
That's your romance, your small town romance angle.
Okay. I'm not sure how the small town park is. Okay.
I was going for the romance angle.
Uh-huh.
Her name is Marianne.
And arranged marriages
Every loop.
and eugenics were, for preservation of the species was allowed.
Okay. So, arranged marriages, and kind of, I think what we're going here is we want to preserve good genetics, more or less. Yeah. To preserve good genetics. So we don't get any mutant freaks. All right. I'm not sure how the necromancy works into this angle, though. I'm not really sure. All right. Yes, sir.
Back on romance,
Yeah.
Ghost of the Machine.
Ghost in the Machine. Okay. Okay.
Or man, whoever the opposite is
Uh-huh.
not expected to be part of that cycle, whereas the love and
Oh, okay. Well, that's kind of interesting. So maybe the character does research to overcome their disease because they don't want to die. But in them, there's a ghost in the machine, and that's the right. So really, he's kind of in love with himself, and so part of his immortality is his love is inside of the machine body. That's him as well. So he has to preserve himself. Okay, interesting. Okay, I don't know if we can get more. Okay, we'll take one more. Yes.
Maybe the government is the only people that are allowed to control the necromancy.
Okay, government-controlled necromancy.
It's memento mori for everyone except us. For everyone except the government.
Okay, so we got like an undead rulership. Okay, so. Okay. Let's stay apolitical here in the real world. Okay.
Too real?
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother discussion. The age limits on our political leaders. Okay, all right. So our environment. We talked about it's a post-apocalyptic world. So what about the climate, the geography? What's germane to the story? Yes.
I'm thinking a series of tunnels and bomb shelters.
Okay.
But foggy, there's a steam up.
Okay, or maybe they're forbidden, and that's where some of that AI stuff is, that he goes and explores, he or she, our main character, goes down and explores, and then they find the ghost in the machine there. So that could be really cool. All right, yes, sir.
And surface travel was so dangerous that to go between cities you had to use airships.
Okay. Yeah, radiated surface, maybe? Or maybe it's biological or mutants, or, okay. Yeah, it could be, yeah, mutants and all sorts of, yes, all right, what do you got for us? Yes. Yeah, no, it's okay, no, you, yes, sir.
The wastelands, that's what the necromancy's for. They send the undead to collect materials from
Okay, so that's maybe what the necromancy is all about, is to send them in against the mutants to get things that we need. Okay. So is our main character an undead hunter who works for the government to get that sort of stuff, and he stumbles across this AI, right? And he's like, well, hey, I'm going to get torn apart eventually, or my body will fall apart as a zombie or whatever the heck I am, undead. And so I want to be able to live forever, right? I don't want to die. So I'm going to embrace this technology, and that's how he gets the ghost of the machine and falls in love with Mary Lou. All right, the end. All right, yeah, we're done, man. This is an awesome story. Okay, who's writing this? All right, who's writing this one? I don't know. What? That's right. That's right. Can we get a sign-in sheet going around here so we can? All right, what are we going to title this thing, though? I don't think we have a title.
This guy suggested
Toy Story 7. All right, that's it. All right, so you can see, obviously we went a little lighthearted with this one. But honestly, we came up with some kind of fun ideas to explore, right? From reverse Pinocchio, we ended up with a small town romance in a post-apocalyptic world with undead and, mutants and AI. So, pretty interesting. So just going through that exercise will help you come up with some pretty cool ideas. Because, like I said, reverse Pinocchio to where we ended up in 7 minutes or something. That was a lot of creativity that flowed out just from doing that little exercise, right? So I think it's very useful. All right. Discussion. So I guess discussion or questions. Does anyone have any questions about world building, some tips they want to share with anybody, some good resources, or a question for me in general? Yes, sir.
As a comment, I actually was with an author that did exactly what you just did.
Uh-huh.
They got a group together and they literally did that to build their book, and everybody that was in the audience did get a note in the book.
Wow.
It was actually kind of fun. He spent an hour just, what would we do if we got to Mars? What would we do this? What would we do that? And he built out a book and kind of drafted out the general thing. So it's actually kind of fun. Just get your friends together and do it.
Yeah, it is. I was amazed at how.
Or play D&D, because that is the master of all role-play games.
Absolutely, I'm not going to argue with that.
Actually, you just took what I was going to say. I had an idea for a world, and I decided to run it as a D&D campaign to flesh out the world.
Yep, and I've heard a lot of lit RPG authors actually will play out kind of their scenarios that they've come up with to see what happens to their character. Do they win the battle or not, or how do they progress? And just, they roll the dice, and that helps them. That's part of their creative process. So that is pretty cool to see that circular feeding itself through that genre. Yes?
Are you familiar with George MacDonald's article or essay, The Fantastic Imagination? 'Cause
No.
I think it's something that everyone who's interested in world building would be. It's from 1893. You can look it up. It's George MacDonald, The Fantastic Imagination, and it's really like this seminal tract on world building for fantasy, and talking about the importance of following your own made-up rules being even more important than following the real world rules.
Well, it sounds interesting. All right, I have to check it out. Thank you. Yeah.
In your opinion, what are the best world-building guides that somebody can get today?
I've
heard many titles, so I don't.
Yeah, I would say that for me, I use kind of my own world creation process from role-playing gaming, right? And I've leavened in, kind of maybe unconsciously, I hate to use that term, but maybe just through my experience in the Army, thinking about politics, economics, social structure, in that sort of way, military structure, and think about how those interplay and create tension, right? So there's a bunch of them out there. Who can recommend a world building resource that they love? You got World Anvil. I think someone mentioned World Anvil is a great way to record and organize. Who has a great world building tool that they would like to recommend for this gentleman? Yes. Well, yeah, of course you can. That's self-promotion. That's what you're here for, right? Yeah, since he asked, you didn't promote it technically, right?
I have a world building workbook on Amazon. It is by C.H. Knight, K-N-Y-G-H-T, as well as character books, but yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. And with that, unfortunately, my time is gone, and we have a hard stop in 15 seconds. So I'll just take this time to say thank you very much, and I really enjoyed going through this with you.